So we created, thank you, Eileen. We created Slauson Spaces as a format for folks who are effectively tired of asking, tired of Googling questions. We understand that there's not a lack of information out there in the internet, but the ability to ask an actual human, not Chat GPT, what the answer is for, or what someone's perspective is when it comes to a certain topic. We value that connection, albeit virtual connection right now. We value the ability to ask a question directly to and hear from one VC's perspective. So this is an opportunity for folks to do that. Again, this is we've done these about a dozen now, and we have covered different topics. Today's topic, which will focus the first 20 minutes or so on, is around stakeholder updates. In the sign up registration sheet, you had a couple of questions around that, so I appreciate folks filling that out. Can talk about those in a second, those early responses. And the remainder is for Q&A. You can ask something completely not related to stakeholder communications. We expect you to ask questions not related to that, and or about your company or specific situation as well. And we can end whenever folks are have all of their questions asked, or before 9 a.m. PT, whichever comes first. So we'll do a couple of quick Slauson introductions, and then I'll share a little bit more about our firm, and then we'll get into some intros from you all, since we're fortunate enough to have a small group this morning. I will let my colleagues go first, and then I'll take it from there. Maybe I'll have Britt and then Eileen introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Crockett. I'm the head of platform at Slauson Co. So I focus on everything founder related and post-investment support. Eileen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eileen. I'm the platform analyst. So I work with Britt on our post-investment side, supporting the founders that we back. And I support Jesús with organizing these. So happy to see you all, and I'll pass it back to Jesús.
Thanks, Eileen and Britt. So hi, everyone. By way of formal introduction, my name is Jesús. I'm a principal with Slauson Co. I lead up the majority of our pre-investment efforts, and then post-investments get involved supporting our founders with their next round of financing. And in terms of our firm, so we are a $75 million pre-seed and seed fund rooted in economic inclusion. How that shows up to us initially is through our two primary areas of investment. Our B2B thesis is SMB Tech, which we define as tools to support the next generation of small business owners. And our consumer thesis is called Culturally Aligned Consumer, which refers to companies building scalable products or services that are authentically targeting overlooked customers. We're typically investing anywhere between $250K up to $2 million, usually leading the majority of the rounds that we get involved with. But we are happy to co-lead in certain situations as well. We have 32 portfolio companies. We also have an accelerator program called Friends and Family. And lastly, our secret, not so secret sauce comes across in our name. So Slauson is a prominent street in Los Angeles. One, it's where our general partners grew up, but two, it's a prominent thoroughfare that cuts across culturally rich but systemically disenfranchised communities, cutting into one of the wealthiest communities of color in the nation. And so we're using the analogy of the street, connecting those disparate communities to be representative of the work that we're trying to do with our firm. Slauson representing the founders that we invest in, the companies that they're building, the ANCO part representing everyone in our ecosystem, including but not limited to our investors. So we're fortunate enough to have some of the big techs, Google, Meta, PayPal, Twitter, et cetera, late stage venture capital funds, notable individual venture capitalists, artists, operators, and founders who are industry titans that are excited about supporting our founders if and when there's a challenge that they can intimately address. So that's a bit about us. Anyone can always reach out to us. We review all submissions of folks that are trying to reach us for potential investment opportunity, collaboration. It's on our website, but we can drop the link in here as well. So we've introduced ourselves. Would love if folks have the ability to introduce themselves, maybe just your name, what you're building. So 1 sentence description about your company, And as a fun icebreaker, yesterday our team talked about fruits. So if you want to share your favorite fruit, and we'll keep it short and sweet, no pun intended. I'll go to my Zoom board, which is Joel and then Mandala.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Hey, Jesús, Eileen, Brittany, nice to meet y'all. So I'm Joel Camacho. I am the COO of Green Wolf Energy. We deploy EV charging stations across Southern California, but the tech that we build is to help us essentially fulfill our mission, which is to install as many EV charging stations as possible in order to meet the demands for all the EVs that are getting on the road. Fun fact, I guess it would be blueberries. I put them in like every single yogurt situation that I get involved in. So
awesome. Thank you.
Nice. Hey guys, nice to meet you. My name is Madala Matherin. I am the CEO and founder of Cozen. At Cozen, we build unique tools to help wellness professionals conduct sessions anywhere and help them track personalized sessions. And my unique fruit would be, I guess, pineapple.
Thank you. See if Alan's able to go off mute. And if not, we can. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy to be here. My name is Alan David. I'm actually just in the ideation stage still. I have experience within the dry cleaning industry, so I'm curious to see if I could build anything with SMB SaaS there, but also overall just for small businesses. This is where I grew up in my family business. Just helping out families with my dad, but yeah, thank you so much for this.
Awesome. Thank you. La Crystal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ella Crystal Parker, and I am the CEO and founder of the Glow Up Network, which is a magazine and a podcast. So content management, we have over probably about on Facebook, so blog every day. Our demographics is between the ages of 18 to 25. African American and Hispanic, and so what we're about is women empowerment and putting out literature of fashion and also health. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Luciano. They're able to come off mute.
Hello, everybody. I'm Luciano, CEO of Learn House. We're a learning analytics platform to help parents get their kids the right learning tools and activities. My favorite fruit, I would have to say strawberries. They go good with ice cream, yogurt somebody mentioned. It goes, and sometimes even salsa. So good to meet all of you.
Thank you. And then last but not least, Dylan, if you're able to come off mute.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Dylan. I'm the CEO and founder of Den. We're building a new modernized residential rental platform to make it easier for landlords and renters to connect with each other, vet each other, and it's going to be powered by an AI-driven matching marketplace. Favorite fruit, keeping it simple, would definitely be a good old banana. If we're making looking for something a little more exciting, I guess I'll go with a dragon fruit.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks everyone for indulging us, and appreciate y'all spending some time with us this morning. So again, we'll spend the next 10-15 minutes sharing thoughts around stakeholder communications. Whenever you signed up for this session, you shared a little bit, you answered a couple of questions regarding this topic. And just to summarize some of those findings, I think the main one is that the majority of you already are familiar and are actually doing some sort of stakeholder communications, which is good in terms of your understanding what they are and what they're for. So our perspective is gonna be from we receive a lot of stakeholder updates from both our portfolio companies, but also companies that are trying to get on our radar, get us to learn more about who they are, what they're building, which I think is actually a very underutilized tool for founders, and I can get more into why I think so. But I'll just share a couple of quick thoughts just to summarize my perspective on the topic, but would welcome any folks asking questions or coming off mute and sharing their perspective when it comes to stakeholder communications or asking questions on the topic. And again, after we're done with the stakeholder communication topic, we can move into more general Q&A, which doesn't have to touch on stakeholder communications at all. But a couple of thoughts in terms of how we view stakeholder communications. So for one, it depends on if, so as a fund, we invest in pre-seed and seed companies, particularly on the pre-seed side. Some of those folks haven't raised institutional capital. By institutional capital, I mean from professional investors, i.e. non-angel investors or non-friends and family. So we as a fund are an institutional investor. And so I share that to say sometimes there's a soft distinction between a communication from a company or a founder that has yet to raise capital versus somebody who's already raised capital, primarily because once you raise capital, generally speaking, you are sending some sort of investor communication. Whereas if you have yet to raise institutional capital in particular, your communications might be more general and or generic, i.e. you're not sharing too confidential of information. So just sharing that perspective, if it's a pre-seed company or if you haven't raised institutional capital, your updates might be a bit more generic because you're not sharing confidential information, and your company might just not be at a stage to where the information that you're sharing you feel needs to be confidential, and you're more open to sharing it with a broader group versus post you having raised capital, and you might still be now sending out investor communications. And so when that is the case, sometimes we've seen folks have two distinct approaches to sending updates. One is an actual confidential investor update, and then a more generic update. That might sound like a lot of work, but generally speaking, you can do one and then scrub out the other for the information that you don't want non-investors to have. And so hopefully it's not duplicative work. It's just minor editing to the communication that you already have. So again, there's general communications, which might go to a broader group, which might include non-investor folks like potential advisors, potential customers, et cetera. And then there's investor communications, which do include more confidential information. And I can talk in a second about what to include, but just want to draw out the distinction. And again, we see that big inflection point between non-confidential and confidential communications coming once you've raised a round of institutional capital. Moving on to what to include. So I'll list out a couple of different areas or categories that we tend to see in different stakeholder communications. If you see others, or if you do others, please feel free to share. One is around metrics. So it's always good to show your cash position, your burn, so how much you are spending on a monthly basis for your business. Typically, that's primarily headcount related or payroll. So cash burn, runway, which is how much, given the amount of cash you have left, in the burn, you just divide those two numbers. You can fairly quickly figure out how much runway you have. If you are generating revenue, that's a little bit different because that can oftentimes extend your runway. Cash burn, runway in terms of number of months. And then you want to highlight your KPIs, so your key performance indicators. This depends completely on your business model. So is it users, is it customers, is it downloads, et cetera? There's a lot of different metrics that can be specific to your business. And generally speaking, you want to be tracking more metrics than a small amount of metrics. One suggestion that I would have that we advise our portfolio companies is to, in the metrics section, include what goals you have in terms of milestones for your next round of financing. So what do I mean by that? if we're investing in a pre-seed company, we, through our onboarding process, which happens post-investment, we collaboratively come up with a set of milestones or goals that we feel are going to make that company and that founding team successful to raise their next round of capital at some point in the not too distant future. And so keeping those metrics top of mind can be helpful. And you can also share how you feel you're doing as a founder, if you're on track or off track. So again, depending on what metrics you're focused on, is that revenue, is that users, is that downloads, is that cities launched, etc. You might have a set number of goals, and we want to understand how you're tracking towards that. And the big thing that I wanted to say here is, it obviously goes without saying, you want to be honest in terms of what you're sharing. And the reason why that is the case is investors want to know when things aren't going on track, because they're supposed to help. And so, founders should never shy away from sharing. Hopefully you have a set of investors to where you feel comfortable being transparent and having a collaborative working relationship. So this gets into my next buckets of sections that we typically see, which is wins. So highlighting things that you're proud of in terms of the product, the team, any sort of major accomplishments that the company has had, followed by challenges. So again, going to the point where, especially at the early stages, we know that stuff breaks, and that's okay. That's expected to happen. You're going to pivot. You're going to learn. We just want to understand that you're taking the time to analyze and assess what's happening, why it's happened, etc. So challenges. And then the last major section we have is around that we see is around asks. So you always want to leverage, and a big reason why you're doing these communications is to continue to amplify the number of supporters you have, so that they can help you in whatever fashion or form that they can. So if you have a need, it's great for you to share that, and then hopefully somebody in your network that's receiving that communication can support. One very minor thing that's worth calling out is including the one sentence description of what your company does. This might sound very basic, but especially at the pre-seed stage, companies are pivoting all the time, and language matters. So if you can always share, hey, this is the one sentence of what we do, as a reminder, not expect everyone to always remember the exact thing that you do, because it likely might change from one month to the other. And so a couple of other thoughts. One thing that one of the questions that we asked is around frequency. I think the most common response that we got from you all was around once a month, which generally speaking feels right. I always advise, don't do something that's going to be unsustainable for you. So if once a week is too much, then that's too much. Don't do it once a week. Sometimes they're once a quarter. What you might do is once a month for your investor communications, and you might do once a quarter for your non-investor general communications. That might be a good way to divide things up and not feel like it's too overwhelming. In terms of the medium, we generally see just generic emails, sort of like MailChimp type, but we also see Notion as a popular option as of recently, over the past couple of years. Be very I'm sure at some point Google Docs was popular, but now Notion seems to be the preferred option outside of email. Maybe what I want to sort of end my thoughts with is what's the purpose of them. So again, I mentioned one of the biggest benefits to you in terms of sending these out is to have to see if there are folks within your network who can help with certain things that you're looking for, whether it's introductions, whether that's some sort of advice, etc. What we want to see, or what we want to read, and by we I mean investors, are a couple of things. And we want to see that the company and you are evolving and you're learning. And this is in terms of sending communications is a very easy and passive way to show that. As investors, we don't just want to invest in, we hear a pitch and we think it's going to be the next amazing thing and we're going to write the check right there. That's kind of what you see in the video, in the Netflix and Hulu series. That's not, generally speaking, how things happen. Investments happen over time by building trust, by building a relationship. And so investor communications can be a very low-hanging fruit way for you to establish that rapport and that connection with investors. As an aside, I've gotten one email from a founder who actually asked me if it was okay to add me to their investor communications. And that's such a low, again, a low hanging fruit kind of thing for me. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say, no, don't email me. And so I was like, yeah, sure. One, consider it for the opt-in. Sometimes people don't, and they just add you. And two, now I'm like, oh, this founder is thoughtful enough to take that extra, very, very small step to ask if that's okay. And I read them now, that whenever I receive them. So again, one small tip there. So we want to see that you're evolving, the company's evolving, and it lets us see or read how you think and operate, how transparent you are or aren't, how reflective you are or aren't. And so again, there's stakeholder communications, there's a lot of positive that can come from it, very little negative, generally speaking. And the last thing that I'll leave you with before seeing if there's any questions on the topic is this is effectively building up your muscle for once you raise an institutional round and once you have a formal board, you're going to have to do board meetings. And generally speaking, you have board communications. And so the earlier you can in your journey, again, build this muscle of having these communications, building out these metrics or dashboards, the better off you'll be in the long run, because effectively you're going to have to do it at some point in the future. So starting early doesn't hurt. Again, there's more upside than there is downside, if any downside at all. But those are a couple of thoughts from my perspective. I've been talking way too much. Would love to pause here and see if there's any questions or comments regarding any communications that you send out, what you found effective. We would encourage that to share with other folks on this call.
I have one quick question that just popped to mind.
Sure, please.
How pretty does this, form of communication need to be?
Doesn't have to be pretty at all. We won't judge you on your artistic ability. We care much more about what's in it than how it looks. But appreciate the question. Yeah, we know you're busy. In fact, if it was too pretty, we might be wondering how much time you have to.
Well, there's like marketing forward, founders, and there's like quant heavy founders that, but good to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're building like a consumer app, then generally speaking, you probably have some sort of design interest or a designer on hand. So maybe there's a slight bias towards, if you're building a consumer facing company, you might have a little bit of a prettier communication update, but no expectation that it needs to be pretty.
Cool.
I was thinking about adding a life update. I'm sending one today, and my co-founder just proposed to, I guess it's now fiance. So I was thinking like putting that picture in there, kind of at the bottom, at the end of the updates.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's building a relationship, and I've seen like things I'm reading or thoughts I'm pondering, podcasts I listen to, music I'm into. Like, you can have, you can make it your own. At the end of the day, you're building a business, and building a business is hard. And so you should feel free to express yourself in a way that is authentic to you. And assuming you want to share that news, in this case, your co-founders' news with the folks that are receiving that, I think that's a positive thing, because you feel comfortable doing so, and it's not like you have to. It's you want to. I think Luciano, I don't know if you had a question earlier.
Yeah, I guess I tend to put I started to put pictures in mine, so I just kind of find it as something kind of adds richness of I'm at a place or I go to a conference. But I was wondering your thoughts on kind of the line between, I guess, confidential versus unconfidential. So for example, I can see for sure putting good details and confidential information for existing investors, but what about for like potential investors? Like if you were looking to kind of socialize them with like, oh, here's how much data we've been able to create and or collect, or this is the kind of discussions we're in with a particular potential partner kind of thing. So I guess what's your opinion on kind of that line of what is be willing to share with the potential that has it kind of crossed over versus like, no, that's a little bit too sensitive, you might not want to release that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it depends on how many people you're sending something to and where you're at with the business. So what I mean by that is, if I'm a founder and I am very critical about the information that I'm sending, which is fine to be kind of critical of it in terms of the sensitivity around it, I think there are ways to creatively still accomplish what you want to accomplish if sending a communication is the goal. So by that, I mean, maybe sometimes you're not sending actual hard numbers, you're just talking about things in percentages. So like we had X month over month growth, or over the past quarter, we've done X or Y or Z. And that, or 2X or 3X or whatever have you. Maybe it's not necessarily this is how much revenue we generated, et cetera. But I put this a little bit in the same bucket of like, I have the next best amazing idea. I want to have investors sign an NDA because I don't want to share it with them. That's, again, easy ideas. Good ideas are not too hard to come by nowadays. It's really about the execution. I'm sure some of you have heard that before. And so given that, generally speaking, you don't have to feel like you have to keep everything close to the heart. If your group of recipients is not that large, then you might be okay with just sharing the information that you would with an investor with a non-investor. I think the only caveat is if you're sending information to an investor that might have a company in their portfolio that might be competitive, or that you might perceive to be competitive to what you're building. That's the only one where I would be a little bit more critical about what you're sending, what information you're sending them to. But beyond that, I think it's, generally speaking, good to celebrate your successes in terms of growth or acknowledge the challenges that you're facing, because it's the reality of the day-to-day for founders, especially at the early stages.
Good, thank you. I mean, I guess maybe just a quick follow-up on that. I haven't done it, but I wonder, like, how would you perceive, or how would you think kind of the investor side would perceive, like, please don't forward, or I guess you kind of want them to forward to people, but that you think could become a supporter or but I wonder, like, would that be a way of kind of angling that?
Yeah. So generally speaking, we do see like, please keep confidential, or please do not share. There are certain times where like somebody might include a section which is like, please share this. And so that's kind of you telling the world, we actually want you to share this, whether that's a post or whether that's a blurb, for example, like for customer introductions. So I think generally speaking, you can have like, please keep confidential, however that comes across clear. But then if there is something that you want your network to share, you can make that explicit. Actually, we do want you to share. Please click on this link, or please share with a potential customer that fits this description. Maybe the last thing that I'll say, which is not your question, is whenever we see asks in our portfolio companies communications, we always prefer, like, the more specific you can be, the better off, because generic asks are generic, and it's hard to actually act on those. And we always strongly encourage our founders to share whatever ask that they may have, whether they might think it's too big or too small. But if it's too generic, that's not great. If it's hyper specific, that's actually a good thing. So a bit of a tangent from your question.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I mean, we have about 25 minutes left. We don't have to continue to talk about stakeholder communications. We do want to leave time for, I know some folks had questions around fundraising whenever they registered. So we'd love to just open it up to more general questions that are top of mind. And yeah, and actually, I think, Tevin, if you wouldn't mind maybe introducing yourself, given we weren't able to hear your introduction. Just share your name, what you're building, and then your favorite fruit. That's what folks shared earlier.
How's everybody doing today? My name's Tevin, and I tell people I deal with the only industry that most people hate but still have to do every year, and that's taxes. And basically what we're building is software that allows tax professionals to file returns in minutes, not hours. We're 1 in 15 IRS approved tax pros softwares in the United States. Currently, we're in Techstars LA, and we're about to finally raise for the first time. Bootstrapped everything up to this point, so happy to be here. And favorite fruit, I have to say these days, probably blueberries.
We had a blueberry earlier.
Oh, yeah, I did? Okay, I thought I'd know.
Well, thanks for joining us.
You're technically the third one, Tevin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, shout out to my blueberries. I didn't expect that.
Thanks for introducing yourself. Yeah, well, again, would welcome if folks have any questions that are top of mind. Doesn't have to be necessarily related to investor communications.
I got a question that's top of mind. So I just started working on the kind of investor pipeline. How do you find, is it an easy way to find the person at the firm? So, I was able to go, okay, segment by, okay, these are people that's at the seed stage. These are the people that's, I guess, pretty good at what we're building, B2B SaaS, whatever the case is. Able to segment that list out, but then kind of, I guess the next column on the sheet is basically the contact or the person that you want to talk to. How do you pick that person when especially for the firms that have 20 people or whatever the case is? Or is it an easy way to kind of cheat code or something that a tool to use?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And want to acknowledge that it's great that you're prioritizing that investor list. The more prioritized, the better you'll be. That's what we strongly advise our portfolio companies to do whenever they are going out to raise the next round of financing. In terms of the specific person, the tool that likely will be the best, if you can find, maybe Techstars has a connection to it, or make friends with investors, is it's PitchBook. So PitchBook, it's a platform that collects startup information. The way that I would go about it is, if you want a specific person because of their background or interest, at smaller firms, it's less of an issue. Like, for example, for us, we're a small team. Anyone can reach out to us. I mean, you can reach out to specific people, but we all discuss all opportunities as a team collaboratively. But we're a different you're a smaller firm, younger firm, if you're trying to talk to a firm that's been around for decades and has 30 plus people, then this strategy is more helpful, i.e. going to PitchBook and maybe even looking at specific deals that they've done. So especially if they're on the board, so you can see if somebody's on the board. Sometimes on their websites, if it's a partner, it'll show you kind of the companies that they're involved with or that they're a board member of. And so that's would be an easy way, if that's available, to figure out, all right, this is the right partner that's focused on B2B SaaS or fintech or whatever have you. Or on PitchBook, or if that's not public on their website, PitchBook can show you who the deal partner was on that lead. So yeah, hopefully Techstars has some connections. If not, make some investor friends that can share that information.
Perfect, thanks.
I have a question. So your thesis is SMB Tech, as tools to help small business owners kind of scale and inclusive founders. How do you, or do you put equal weighting on both parts of the thesis, or how do you think about kind of with the analyze the companies that you get really excited about?
Yeah, and I'll actually drop a link just to share a little bit more information about ourselves. This is what we share with all of the companies that we have a first conversation with. Actually, it's on our website if you submit your information to us online. But to answer your question, we look at both of the same with an asterisk. So roughly 50% of our companies are SMB Tech or fall under our SMB Tech thesis, and then another half under our culturally aligned consumer thesis. That said, we think about it a little bit different from the sense of stages. So we are much more comfortable, generally speaking, with doing something pre-product, pre-launch that's on the B2B side. Generally speaking, I mean, there's a couple of reasons, but one of them, because of we feel more comfortable with identifying opportunities in that space that is pre-product or pre-launch, because if generally speaking, a B2B company isn't going to launch and not not launch with generating revenue. So by that I mean a consumer focused company might launch and they might only have users like downloads, etc., but they might not be generating revenue for quite some time. Think about Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So generally speaking, we're more comfortable and willing to do pre-product, pre-launch on the SMB Tech side. On the consumer side, that's less the case. Not because we're anti-consumer. Again, half of our portfolio is consumer, but for the consumer deals, they've been more on the seed stage, where at that point, we've been able to see clear value proposition in terms of resonating with users, strong downloads, etc. Whereas with SMB Tech, it's a little bit different. So that's probably the main way that I would draw out that distinction between our two theses. But we see both and we invest in both. Our latest 3 deals, 2 of them were SMB Tech, and 2 of them are last 4 deals, 2 half and half. So we don't have a quota, but that's just kind of how it falls.
Nice, thank you.
I have a question. So when it comes time to trying to raise some funds, and yeah, you're basically, as for the other question from Tevin, building out your prioritized investor list, trying to build out your network, start as many conversations as possible. I guess kind of like, what's your strategy and how do you go about building those relationships? Given to your earlier point, they take time, and building trust is a critical part of the equation. So say you may not actually be wanting to raise for 3 to 6 months. How would you kind of approach kicking off those conversations and building up that network and really trying to get in front of people and build trust, knowing that you're a little bit out and people are busy?
Yeah, the short answer is start early and invest time. There's really no way around it. but that you'd be surprised that that's actually the exception, not the norm. So what I mean by that is, I think the majority of founders, for to no fault of their own, once they start raising, they're like, I'm gonna email 100+ people from this pitch book list that I just got and start fundraising. And that's fine. Again, that's the norm. What we strongly encourage our portfolio companies to do and help facilitate is starting to have what we call friendly conversations as early as possible, as early as I just closed this last round of capital. So I'm going to start to have conversations. That might sound super draining and super time consuming, and unfortunately it is. But again, you have to do things that not the average person does to get results that not the average person gets. And the average person doesn't get that TechCrunch fundraise that you see that makes all founders think that they should be getting that amount of capital. Media publishes the exceptions, not the norm, unfortunately. So all that to say, the way to do it, Dylan, is ask for feedback. Ask to introduce yourself, get feedback on your business. You don't have to take that feedback. But if you're framing a conversation around, hey, I would love to share more about what we're doing, get some feedback on our business model, our go-to-market, whatever you actually, ideally you do want feedback on. And it's a way, and if you schedule it out early enough, generally speaking, investors are more open to taking that conversation than they are with taking a pitch call. The reason being, we're getting on a daily, weekly basis, dozens or hundreds of pitches from the majority of founders that are trying to just raise around right now because they need to raise. Our time is limited in terms of calls that we can have. I literally have like 9 calls today. So the earlier you can get on people's radars, the better you are with scheduling things out. So that, you don't expect for someone to respond right away, and don't expect for you to have a call tomorrow, like the next day. But if you're reaching out early enough, you're sharing information that makes them excited about what you're building. You've done a little bit of homework on why you're even wanting to talk to them. It's a thoughtful note that you're sending, or a thoughtful submission that you're sharing on LinkedIn or on their website, et cetera. I would bet that the hit rate of people opting into those conversations would be higher than if you're just blasting a fundraise email saying, I'm raising, can I pitch you? I think it would be significantly higher. So start early, ask for feedback, and there's many benefits to doing that. Again, this is what we advise our founders. One of the big benefits to have in those conversations is pressure testing some of your assumptions. So by that I mean, you only have the data points that you're seeing from TechCrunch, likely, or maybe a couple of founders that you have in your network. We get market data real time, multiple times a day. So by that I mean, you can ask investors, hey, for a company raising this amount and potentially expecting this amount of dilution, or with this traction, or with these metrics, or hitting these milestones, like how would that make you excited, or what would make you excited? Like you're kind of feeling and understanding what that firm's perspective is on a successful raise, given whatever business you're building. Is it B2B? Is it a certain sector? Is it a certain business model? So all that feedback should help craft your narrative and your pitch for whenever you are actively raising.
I love it. Thank you very much. That was extremely insightful. And funny enough, I would love some feedback if you have some time.
Sure. Just shoot us over some information, and we can drop in our email.
Awesome. Will do. Thank you.
No, we have about 10 minutes left. So folks can ask other questions, other topics that are top of mind.
It's Luciano again. Maybe kind of a intersectional question between the communications and fundraising.
Sure.
I'm in the planning stages for our pre-seed, and so I'm just and kind of one of my hypotheses around trying to couple a crowdfund with a classical raise, as I'm calling it. So I guess maybe what would be some of your thoughts, or what, I guess back to your point about kind of market signals. I guess what are you seeing and hearing as kind of that as a possible scenario? I mean, so what I'm thinking is kind of like lead with a crowdfund, maybe with a couple of strong angel leads or kind of early stage investor leads who can kind of kick off that round on the crowdfund side. And typically, I think you can do between 1 and 5 million at any one of the platforms. So set a goal there, and then get that ball rolling, and then fast follow with what I'm calling the classical raise, where you approach, or I guess you kind of start to harness all the relationships and conversations with kind of your stream of pipeline of potential early stage investor types. And so I'm just wondering, what do you think about that kind of strategy around kind of a pre-seed type of raise?
Yeah, no, it's a good, interesting question. So I'll share a couple of thoughts and immediate reactions. My immediate reaction is I would actually think about flipping the order, not necessarily because it might mean that you're more successful. What I'm thinking is you want to be, the reason why I would flip the order, if at all, is because I'm a big fan of the Republics and the We Funders of the world, but generally speaking, I haven't seen a case where an institutional fund is investing alongside an equity crowd fundraise, not because we're against it. I think maybe a couple of our portfolio companies have looked at that as an option. I think maybe one has actually done it post our investment. So we're not by any means against them. The one caveat that I will say in being a fan of those platforms is, I don't know how they're pricing things from a valuation standpoint. So because you're on an equity crowdfunding platform, I don't know. I haven't done one myself, but the valuation is likely set by you / maybe with some feedback from them. And what I would be cautious of is that you're expecting the institutional investors to invest at the same terms that the equity crowdfund investors came in at, which I would not expect to be the case, because an institutional investor is going to price or offer a valuation or offer terms that fit with their own strategy. Whereas an equity crowdfund investor, I wouldn't say that they don't care about valuation, but they're likely not super valuation sensitive, whereas an institutional investor is, and they have to be, because they likely raised their fund promising investors to act on a certain strategy. So that would be my only caveat. Just being careful around you thinking, like, let's say you raise a successful crowd investing raise, and then you're like, oh, I'm successful here, I should be successful at raising institutional capital. Unless you're already expecting that the terms are going to be different, I would be cautious to expect that the success from one will translate to the other. And even vice versa. There's institutional, if you raise a round of institutional capital, that might not necessarily mean that you're a good fit for crowd investing platforms, because there's a certain crowd investing platforms. Again, I'm a big fan. It's a lot of work. It costs money, and it can be a tool for like marketing. So you have to have a little bit of the right business in terms of business model, and really understand the trade-offs with doing one. So I don't think I have a clear, definitive answer, but more about just being cautious of thinking through the pros and cons of each.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Now we have about 5-6 minutes left. If you haven't asked a question, would encourage you to do so, but also folks can ask other questions depending on what's.
Sure, Jesús.
So, I don't know if it's my connection, but I think you cut off.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Maybe it's
Okay.
easy to type
The
in.
question I had was,
Oh, no, I think you're good.
I'll type it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The question I have is going through or affiliate, like your affiliate with the grid. And what is the advantage of being a part of that, the Grid 110? Can you elaborate more on it?
Yeah, certainly. So what LaCrystal is referring to is, I mentioned briefly at the beginning of our cause, we have an accelerator program called Friends and Family. We can share the link to it. We've done 2 cohorts so far. We'll be doing our 3rd cohort next year. Each cohort consists of 20 companies. To date, they have each company receives cash grants of $25,000, but in addition to that, they participate in a 12-week program where we have a number of different curriculum, and that curriculum has been in many ways perfected by Grid 110. Grid 110's been around for 7 years. They've ran dozens of accelerator programs for different organizations, and so we strategically chose to partner with them because of their experience and background in this space, but also they're really one of the leaders around building community, which sounds fuzzy, but when it comes to being a founder, especially at the early stages, makes a big difference. I think Tevin's going through Techstars. So accelerators, there's thankfully a number of them out there now. We hope that ours, from a Slauson perspective, we leverage the & Co part of our name, the network that we've built of, again, industry titans who are excited about supporting our founders. The link that you have shows the past 2 cohorts. You can see some of the caliber of speakers that we've had that don't just speak to the companies, but actually give advice directly on sessions. We focus on leadership development. We have accountability groups. So there's a little bit for a little bit something for everyone, if you will. But it's meant for early stage founders. I mean, there's certain hard requirements in terms of capital that you have raised. You have to raise it below a certain amount. There's an application and an interview. So those are a little bit more color on our Friends and Family Accelerator. Happy to answer any other specific questions if you have any other questions about it.
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
One other thing that I'll mention just in terms of like how it benefits your company is just you have the opportunity to really dig into specifics. So like identifying your customer, how you tell your story, some of those things that are usually plaguing founders at the like very early stages of their companies, we're able to dig into those things. And we don't only just focus on them on our sessions, but then you'll go into your accountability groups and also kind of talk through them and have support from other founders who are doing something similar or who have had experiences that can help you kind of further your company as well.
I know we're coming up on time. Thanks, Brittany. Any last question that we can help answer?
I got to go to the next meeting, but this is great. Thank you guys so much.
Cheers. Well, if there isn't, happy to give folks a minute or 2 back on their Tuesday mornings. Appreciate you all joining us, and keep updated with our socials. We have these once a month, cover different topics, and we'll be sending out a short survey feedback form to get your thoughts and feedback. So again, appreciate you all being with us this morning. Have a great rest of your day and week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you.